Welcome, everyone, to the Post Breeders' Cup edition of the It's Official podcast, created by Jeff Siegel, proudly hosted by Jeremy Plonk. We're representing First Bet and Express Bet. We do this every Tuesday, taking on 5 hot topics in horse racing. And, of course, Breeders' Cup Championships number 42, now in the rearview mirror after a big 2 days at Del Mar. We'll talk about the winners and the losers at Del Mar and quite a few star-studded performances. But as we do each and every week here on the podcast, we're going to start things off with our Goosebump Award winner. The Goosebump Award, of course, goes to the horse who did the most to get us excited, to get us up out of our seat, the most impressive winner of the week last week. And I'll tell you, we didn't have to wait too long on Breeders' Cup Saturday to find the Goosebump Award winner this week. She's So Spicy in the Turf Sprint. What an outstanding performance she had. The first 3-year-old filly to win the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, and she did it in commanding fashion.
AG Bullet is up into fourth now, 4 lengths off the filly. She's So Spicy, who's by herself at the top of the stretch. She's So Spicy, coming down to the 8th pole, a 3-length lead. Invincible Papa, Governor Sam next. Reef Runner coming late, caught him on the far outside, and AG Bullet, but there's no catching. She's So Spicy. She's so speedy in that sprint. She won it by 4 lengths on the wire. And then it was AG Bullet second, followed by Cottam and Reef Runner.
Dominant performance by daylight, larger margin of victory than the last 5 Breeders' Cup Turf Sprints combined. It was the largest margin of victory. In fact, the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint had never been won by 2 lengths or more. What a just dominant performance by She's So Spicy. Again, a 3-year-old filly beating the older males, an outstanding performance. 3-year-old daughter of Matoli, 6 for 9 in her career. Now over $2 million in earnings. And of all the great performances at the Breeders' Cup throughout 14 divisions, that one really stands out for trainer Jose D'Angelo. And he wasn't done. We'll talk about him more later in the show. Now, from our biggest winner in terms of the excitement and the goosebumps to the biggest winner of the weekend, no question about it. Forever Young made a forever statement in winning the Breeders' Cup Classic. The Japanese runner had kind of broken ground with a third-place finisher in last year's Kentucky Derby, inviting the Japanese to years to come in the Kentucky Derby, showing that they can have success on the first Saturday in May. His third-place finish in last year's Breeders' Cup Classic again opened doors. This year, he kicked the door in and was phenomenal in his performance in winning the Breeders' Cup Classic. From Japan to Dubai to parts in between and here to the U.S. Forever Young just continues to take his game with him. Let's go back and relive Saturday's Breeders' Cup Classic. Gate to wire, Larry Comas with the call.
No. They're off in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Baeza was off to a slow beginning. Fierceness goes out to the early lead and runs straight today and straight to the front. Contrary Thinking now moves up alongside of him, and Contrary Thinking will take the lead. Forever Young is close. He's right there on the outside, and Fierceness is down toward the rail. Then comes Mind Frame and Antiquarian. Journalism is guided inside by Jose Ortiz. Nevada Beach is along the rail. Baeza is second last, leading only last year's winner, Sierra Leone, past the opening quarter mile in 23.04 seconds. So Contrary Thinking out there doing his job. He's in front by 2 lengths. Forever Young on the outside of Fierceness, second and third. Break of 2 to Nevada Beach, who's down toward the rail. Mind Frame on the far outside. Journalism between those two, just 4 from the front. Then Antiquarian, and it's 3 back to Sierra Leone and Baeza. 45.97 was the half mile. And with 5 furlongs to run, Contrary Thinking leads the field up the Breeders' Cup Classic in front by a half a length, with Forever Young right alongside. Mind Frame just to the outside of them makes it 3 in a line. Fierceness just in behind with Journalism to his outside. Then Nevada Beach, Baeza, Sierra Leone between them, and Antiquarian is the trailer. Around the far turn, Forever Young pokes his head in front. Mind Frame, and now Journalism confronts them. As Contrary Thinking drops back, Baeza is 4 wide. Fierceness in behind horses. Sierra Leone is right in contention too as they make their way to the top of the stretch. And they're into the stretch in the Breeders' Cup Classic. And Forever Young turns for home with the lead. Journalism is second. Sierra Leone, Fierceness, 1 off the rail. Still Forever Young to catch. Fierceness is coming. Sierra Leone and Journalism, they're coming to the finish. And it is Forever Young. Celebrate Japan! They've won the Breeders' Cup Classic.
What a performance. Forever Young. Last year, if you remember, Forever Young up against the pace was stalking and really pressing hard in 44 and change. When they went almost 46 here, despite a rabbit in the field with contrary thinking, you knew that he wasn't going to kind of give back that advantage. Hats off to the rally from way back in the pack by Sierra Leone. Of course, he made up 3 lengths over the last half mile of the race. The only horse over the last half mile to make any significant ground up on Forever Young. In fact, only 2 horses closed the margin on Forever Young over the final half of the race. A quarter of a length better fierceness over that time. So they were basically a push. And then the 3-length margin made up over the last half by Sierra Leone, who was forced into a little earlier move than probably he would have liked, obviously, for his late running style. But that's the way the race set up. And when they go 8 to 10 lengths slower the first half mile than they did in last year's Classic, it really was advantage to Forever Young and Fierceness, who last year really attended that pace set by Derma Sotogake. This year, the pace wasn't as strong, but boy, did they come home. A little bit of a breather during the third quarter. If you look at the fractional splits in here, 25-1 for the fourth quarter in this race. And then when they got to the fifth and final quarter of the race, there was acceleration, 24-49. So basically, you're looking at about 7,100. So probably in the ballpark of 4 lengths faster over the final quarter mile than the fourth quarter of the race for Forever Young. So he was able to get a little bit of a break under Ryo Sakai and then really just kicked on in the stretch. Nobody was going to get him in the gallop out. He was the best horse in here. While it looks like the margin is diminishing in the late rally of Sierra Leone, no question in my mind, they could have run 1 3/4 miles in this race, and the winner would have been Forever Young. He was simply best on this particular day. And what a career he's had now. 10 for 13 lifetime. This puts him over $19 million in career earnings. That's the most of any horse who's ever raced in North America. Romantic Warrior has topped the 20 million mark. And of course, you remember Romantic Warrior, the big horse from Hong Kong, who had the great throwdown earlier this year in February in Saudi Arabia, the Saudi Cup throwdown between Romantic Warrior and the big horse here, Forever Young, that we're talking about. That race kind of knocked Forever Young out a little bit, and he bounced next time out in the Dubai World Cup when running an inexplicable third. Not a bad performance to be third in the Dubai World Cup, but when you figure that Mixto was second and Hit Show were the winner of that race, we know on any other given day, I think you're looking at a major edge to Forever Young in a head-to-head matchup with those 2 horses over 1 1/4 miles. No question that was a step back for him in the Dubai World Cup, really the only one he's had. And when you look at a horse whose only regression is a third in the Dubai World Cup, you understand what kind of career we've seen out of Forever Young. What I like about Forever Young and why I think this is so important and why I said he kind of makes a forever statement, because this is a throwback. I know it's a Japanese horse and it's new to what we're used to seeing here win big races in America, but it's a throwback in the way that he is campaigned. This horse comes into the race second off the layoff. As a handicapper, to me, the most effective form cycle in all of racing. We see too many horses coming off big layoffs and running in major races. No prep race in between. They just come back firing all hell's bells from off of a layoff and trying to fire at these biggest levels. And we're just trying to squeeze the lemon out of these horses too many times, running them off layoffs and just trying to fire big races when the big money's on the line. There's some old school horsemanship involved here to bring this horse back in a listed stakes race at Funabashi last time out. That got him from that bounce effort in the spring in Dubai, that easy race, and now he was ready to move forward with a huge effort. It's an old school training tactic that we used to see years upon years here in America, and people have just abandoned it, whether it's medication, whether it's withdrawal times, whether it's the fragility of a racehorse and the breed, whether it's trainers and owners worried about their win percentages. Whatever the case, we do not see these first off the layoff type performances in the U.S. like we used to and like we should. And for me as a handicapper, I really appreciate what Forever Young has done. And I like the fact that he bounced when he should have bounced. His form looks exactly like his form should look for a great racehorse. Great racehorses after a big throwdown kind of race are probably going to regress a little bit. If you just keep firing big effort after big effort after big effort, there has to be some skepticism as a handicapper and as someone who has watched horse racing for as long as maybe you have out there or I have for more than 30 years. There's skepticism when horses just keep firing huge effort after huge effort after huge effort and then coming off long layoffs and just firing a huge effort. This horse's campaign is what a great horse should look like. He ran to it. And for me, as a handicapper who would love to see that, and as a fan of horse racing, who would love to see that become the norm again, I like the fact that he is a trendsetter in reestablishing that. And that's what he's been throughout his career, right? I mean, forever young. Remember, when he won at the Saudi Derby coming from Japan, he beat Bochum Dano and Ben Tornado, two tremendous sprinters, the two best sprinters in America right now, were horses he beat going a one-turn mile, was able to rally and get up then. And a horse like this, now as he goes longer, he's got more tactical speed. He's up on the pace. He's not a one-run closer. He's got versatility. There's just so much to like about Forever Young, and really, really happy to see him win the Breeders' Cup Classic. To me, the best result in that race would have been Forever Young and Journalism. Those are the two horses who I love the way they've been campaigned, and I thought Journalism ran a really good race in running fourth. You look at the race in there, he ended up fourth. Journalism was beaten 3 3/4 lengths for all the money. Not a bad performance at all for a horse that everybody said had peaked and had no more to give. I thought he made a really improved effort here. He only got beat 2 1/4 lengths by Fierceness. Of course, Fierceness handled him in the race in the Pacific Classic by 3 1/4 lengths. So he got a length better against Fierceness than he was at Del Mar. He ran a better race. Fierceness ran an excellent race as well. Fierceness, for all the talk of his inconsistency over time, he brought his race here on what's probably the final start of his career now as he heads off to a stallion career. An excellent race from Fierceness. Sierra Leone, again, plaudits to him coming from where he did in the field. And he's a horse, remember, we talked about him for a while with the leaning and all the problems he had early on and the inefficient action and the paddling. He has stayed together sound and healthy, and minus one really mystifying effort or two throughout his career. He's been remarkably consistent as well. Sierra Leone, outstanding. So really, when you look at the result of the Breeders' Cup Classic, Forever Young first, Sierra Leone second, Fierceness third, Journalism fourth, all superb efforts. Mindframe, obviously, not a bad effort in fifth in there. He gets beat 7 1/4 lengths in a race where he had not had a serious start since June. He regressed a little bit. He did not fire fresh, as some handicappers, myself included. The skepticism of how hard these horses fire fresh nowadays kind of made me elevate Mindframe and thought that maybe he was going to fire a cracker in this spot, but it was kind of old school in the result there in that he was empty when it counted there, fifth beaten 7 1/4 lengths, fading a bit down the lane. But the Breeders' Cup Classic, to me, a very satisfying result. The right horse won, campaigned the right way, and the other horses who we expected to run well did run well. It was an outstanding edition of the Breeders' Cup Classic, one we're going to remember for a long time, even with the scratch of Sovereignty, right? What a disappointment that Sovereignty came down with the fever reportedly earlier in the week and had the scratch from the race. I doubt we're going to see Sovereignty race again. He could come back maybe towards the Dubai World Cup, of course, owned by Godolphin and Sheikh Mohammed Rashid Al Maktoum, who owns Maidan Racecourse, and of course they operate and run the Dubai World Cup. So there would be some incentive to bring him back and keep him in training through the Dubai World Cup, and you could still make the breeding season in the spring that way, but it'd be cutting it close in that regard. I don't know what they have to accomplish other than maybe Sheikh Mohammed wanting to win his big race with his Kentucky Derby, Belmont, and Travers winner in Sovereignty. But otherwise, we'll probably have seen the last of Sovereignty. Forever Young, on the other hand, though, will be back next year, according to trainer Yoshida Yohagi in the post-race quotes. He says they're going to come back for a 5-year-old campaign next year that'll look very similar in the spring, Saudi Cup, Dubai World Cup, then maybe take the summer off of preparation in Japan and maybe back to defend the title in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Of course, next year the Breeders' Cup is headed to Keeneland. Also, some other news amongst who may be back out of this Breeders' Cup Classic next year. No word yet on Journalism. They do have a stallion deal, but whether or not they run at age 4 is still to be determined. By AZA, it was announced today by the connections there, CRK Stable, that they are going to take a little bit of time off and then regroup for a 4-year-old campaign. So excited to see Baeza back next year. He leapt at the start, kind of left himself too much to do, and was a disappointment, obviously, in the Breeders' Cup Classic. But Baeza's apt to do that, right? He's had a lot of issues in his races mentally. Maybe as a 4-year-old, he'll figure it out. We were talking about some of these mental issues with Sierra Leone earlier on in his career as well. He put it together at the end of last year and has continued it mostly throughout the course of his 4-year-old year. So there's hope for a horse like Baeza who can get the mental part all figured out. That's our second topic this week. Forever Young makes a forever statement. Let's go to our third topic this week on It's Official. What are the lasting images for me of Breeders' Cup 2025? Well, first and foremost, it started off on Saturday with the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. Splendora's workout going into the Breeders' Cup in 47 and change was the most remarkable workout I've ever watched on video and I've ever seen in person. Now, I've seen a lot more workouts on video than in person based on location and amount of days I've been at the racetrack compared to watching video at home. But I can tell you this, it was a sensational workout to which I thought if she runs back to this, we're going to see something special. We absolutely did in the Filly and Mare Sprint. It's a shame that the scratches kind of depleted the field. And as a gambler, it was a shame that our price was knocked all the way down to $780 on Splendora. But her performance at the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint validated what we saw on video. And I can tell you, it's the best workout I've ever seen going into a Breeders' Cup and I've ever seen on video. And secondly, it harkens me back about 15 years to when Goldakova was part of the Breeders' Cup pre-entries for her first time running in the Breeders' Cup. So I go back and I'm like trying to research all the horses I don't know that well. And I watched Goldakova on video and I saw a turn of foot in her races in Europe that were unlike anything I had seen on video. I was like, this filly is absolutely special. She ended up winning 3 straight Breeders' Cup miles. These are the 2 lasting impressions I have of video study going into the Breeders' Cup, Splendora's workout this year, and Goldakova. I mean, you're talking about like a 15-plus year gap in between those 2, not seeing anything like it in between. So Splendora, for me, for sure, one of the lasting images of the 25 Breeders' Cup.
44.6 for the half, and Hope Road has taken the lead on the far turn. Splendora has circled up on the outside, then Ricci. Hall and Ice down toward the rail. Vava begins her run, but she's got 4 lengths to make up as Splendora has taken the lead under Flavian Pratt with 1 furlong to run. Leaving stablemate behind, Hope Road second, then comes Vava to the outside. Splendora running away in the Filly and Mare Sprint. She won it by 5 lengths on the wire.
Tremendous performance there. Another tremendous performance just a couple races later in the sprint for the males. Splendora took the Filly and Mare Sprint. Ben Tornado was absolutely fabulous for Jose D'Angelo. It was the second of back-to-back winners on the card for D'Angelo. We already saw She's So Spicy at the top of the show. She was our Goosebump Award winner for just the most chilling performance of the Breeders' Cup overall. Well, what about this one from Ben Tornado? Just dusted him in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, and some horses behind him ran absolute A-plus races. Ben Tornado was fantastic.
Ben Tornado and Straight No Chaser passed the 3 furlong pole together. The 1-2 finishers last year, 1-2 this year on the far turn. American Stage from Japan is third on the inside. Mulligan is under pressure. Imagination is coming on now. 1 off the rail and moving up as they come toward the top of the stretch. Ben Tornado, Straight No Chaser. Imagination swings up on the outside. American Stage is running a big one too. Ben Tornado turns loose with 1 furlong to run. Imagination second. Dr. Venkman closing outside, but Ben Tornado and Gerard Ortiz have won the Breeders' Cup Sprint over Imagination.
The re-break, the stretch out to the wire with the leg extension, just phenomenal performance by Ben Tornado. We talked about him just a second ago, going back to February of 2024 in the Saudi Derby, that 1-turn mile that day. He was third, beaten 6 lengths. Forever Young got the nose down on the wire to beat Bookham Dano, and now it becomes Ben Tornado and Bookham Dano to dispute the champion sprinter honors here in North America. Of course, Bookham Dano had a Grade 1 win earlier this year. Not many Grade 1 sprints on the docket throughout the course of the season. So the win here in Grade 1 company, even just the second of start of the year for Ben Tornado, gets him on a match when you talk about head-to-head with number of Grade 1 wins with a horse like Bookham Dano. So a really impressive performance by Ben Tornado here. Does he do enough to upend Bookham Dano for champion sprinter? A lot of it will come down to the voters and what they think of the sporting nature. Of course, Bookham Dano's connections said they didn't want to run in the Breeders' Cup. They'd bypass it and get ready for a campaign next year. To pass up the championship day in a head-to-head matchup with Ben Tornado, how many voters, when it comes to Eclipse Award time, will hold that against Bookham Dano? How many people will look at the breadth of the resume and say that Bookham Dano did more during the course of the year with more starts and more victories? That'll be interesting. That'll be one of the most talked about Eclipse Award votes as we get to the end of the season. But for my money, Bookham Dano or not, nobody, and I mean nobody, was beating Ben Tornado on Saturday. Phenomenal performance, back-to-back wins on the card for trainer Jose Delangelo with horses who ran off the screen in the sprint ranks. Reminded you a lot of Peter Miller a couple of years ago when he was popping horses in the turf sprint and in the sprint as well. Very Peter Miller-like performance this year. Jose D'Angelo, back-to-back wins in the Breeders' Cup. The other lasting image I have of this 2025 Breeders' Cup came in the Breeders' Cup turf because we had Mini Hawk, the brilliant 3-year-old filly who just missed in the Arc de Triomphe. We had the horse going for a 3-time Breeders' Cup mile unprecedented title in Rebels Romance. And the one who ends up getting the victory in there, Ethical Diamond, one of the biggest upsets in Breeders' Cup history. I'll tell you why in just a moment, but let's go back and take a look at this stayer who got to the church on time.
Around the far turn, Salawi, Goliath, and Mini Hawk. Rebels Romance needs a place to go behind them. Rebel Red has circled up on the far outside. On the rail, it is Amalok, and then redistricting, and they're into the stretch, and the filly takes charge. It is Mini Hawk who comes off the turn in front. Rebels Romance comes to take her, and Ethical Diamond is charging down the middle of the turf course and goes by them all. Ethical Diamond has taken the lead, and at 25-1, Ethical Diamond wins the turf. And then it was Rebels Romance second.
Ethical Diamond, a former steeplechaser, a jumper, as they say in Europe, turning back in distance for the 1 3/4 Ebor handicap. This horse has not run like short like this as success in a 1.5 mile race at an upper level. This horse was just kind of a class 2 runner going 1.5 miles in Europe, and to win this race, the Europeans gave this horse absolutely no chance in the foreign betting markets whatsoever. It was actually a major underlay in price in terms of the U.S. market, but at $57, this is the largest price in the Breeders' Cup turf, matching Better Talk Now, but the largest price since $86 on Miss Alleged back in 1986. I mean, we're talking about a long time back here, the third largest payoff in the history of the Breeders' Cup turf. And I'll argue this is as much of an upset or the biggest upset in the history of the Breeders' Cup turf. Of course, Willie Mullins, well known for his steeplechasers in Europe, but certainly not on the flats. And I'll give you $1 if 0.5% of handicappers betting this year's Breeders' Cup knew who jockey Dylan McMonagle was going into the race. I mean, just an unthinkable victory here by Ethical Diamond. Tremendous performance. Not that the horse certainly didn't have some credentials. You're talking about a horse coming in off of back-to-back wins. But again, we're talking about generally a steeplechaser here, taking on horses that, you know, are the tops in the world. An ARC runner-up, a 2-time Breeders' Cup turf winner, and others in there who were outstanding horses in this year's Breeders' Cup turf, but certainly a top-heavy edition of the turf where nobody really thought you would get down to Ethical Diamond. I did see some good handicappers who picked them out off of Twitter, so congratulations to those of you who had them. In fact, Zenyatta John, an old chatter, and some of our old Horse Player Now chats, I know he picked the horse and a very good turf handicapper, but this was a hard one to get. So if you got him, you really earned your money and did a great job. I will forever understand not how a stayer from Europe won the Breeders' Cup turf, and not just a stayer from Europe, but a steeplechaser from Europe was able to cut back and win the Breeders' Cup turf. A truly remarkable performance, one of the biggest upsets we've seen in Breeders' Cup grass racing history, and certainly in the Breeders' Cup turf, arguably the biggest upset we've ever seen in the 42 years of the Breeders' Cup turf. So I'm going to remember this race for quite some time. Let's talk about some of our other performances over the course of the weekend as we go to topic 4 this week on the It's Official podcast. There was no shame in the game of several really, really good-looking runner-up performances throughout the weekend. We've seen some of these on video already throughout the podcast that we've had today. I thought Imagination's run in the Breeders' Cup Sprint wins the Breeders' Cup Sprint 30 out of 40 years. I mean, it was a really good second-place effort in there, stalked to the top of the stretch, but then Ben Tornado just rebroke. But it was a winning move by Imagination. I thought he ran a good enough race to win the Breeders' Cup Sprint most years. We talked about the She's So Spicy with the ultimate performance of the Breeders' Cup and just dominating on the front end of the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. AG Bullet, again, ran a winning race in that one. Most years, AG Bullet would be in the winner's circle right now. So I thought she had an outstanding performance. Rebels Romance, let's salute his performance. Again, going for that third Breeders' Cup Turf. He made the lead. He passed Mini Hawk. You figure you get by Mini Hawk at the 16th pole, you got it wrapped up. And who thought Ethical Diamond would come rolling by him at that point? He came with this race, right? We expected to see the best of Rebels Romance off that huge prep in New York, and he came with it again. Some other horse just snatched it away, and that's the same way. Imagination had the sprint snatched away by a tremendous performance by Ben Tornado. AG Bullet, again, same thing with She's So Spicy in the turf sprint. And then when you look at this Breeders' Cup Turf, it was there. It was there for the taking, and there's no shame in the game for Rebels Romance. It was just an unbelievable performance on a single day by Ethical Diamond, who ran an absolutely tremendous race. A couple other horses who had no shame in their game. We're going to take a look at a few replays in here. I thought Formidable Man ran an excellent race in the Breeders' Cup Mile for Michael McCarthy. You talk about a horse who was 6 for 6 lifetime on the Del Mar turf. He was the horse for course and didn't get a lot of respect. He was let go at a big price, and he ran his race. He almost pulled off the Breeders' Cup Mile, but he took the Overland route, and it was an inside trip for the favorite that got it done in there. Let's go back to the Breeders' Cup Mile and take a look. Formidable Man ran his race just second best in here to the chalk.
A 50-1 long shot who leads the field around the far turn. Rhetorical ranges up alongside in hand, and now they're side by side on the far turn. Formidable Man tries to get going. The Lion in Winter behind them. Johannes swings up 3 wide. Meanwhile, Notable Speech is down toward the rail. He's got running room, but he needs to go now to catch Rhetorical with a furlong to run. The Lion in Winter, Notable Speech, and Formidable Man on the outside. Here comes Notable Speech charging up the fence. Notable Speech and William Buick explode late to win the Breeders' Cup Mile. And that was Formidable Man, the Lion in Winter.
Tough loss for Formidable Man. You get by the Lion in Winter. You get by the Aidan O'Brien, the big Group 1 runner over from Europe. You get by the pace setter in there, Rhetorical, only to have the favorite get an absolute dream trip up the inside. It was one of those tough beats for sure for Formidable Man, but I thought he ran absolutely formidable in this particular spot. Another one that I thought ran her race, got the dream trip, everything you could have asked for, just the way it's set up on paper. It looked like She Feels Pretty in the finale of the Breeders' Cup and Affiliate Mare Turf would sit right behind some speed that was more than likely to come behind her. She would inherit the lead, open up, and then have to fend off the Europeans late. It's exactly the way the race set up. And for a filly who has never run a bad race in her career, She Feels Pretty ran another banger, but again, came up just second best.
She Feels Pretty, 3/4 of a length behind. Village Voice, Cathedral next, then Jazura. Mission of Joy on the inside. Diamond Rain, Cinderella's Dream being asked for her run. She's 3 wide. She's got 5 lengths to gain. In the meanwhile, She Feels Pretty has taken the lead at the top of the stretch and opens up the lead by 2. Jazora, second on the outside. Down toward the inside, running along in third position is Cathedral. And then in the center, it is Diamond Rain. They're coming down to the wire. Here comes Jazora. Jazora runs down She Feels Pretty to win. Then Diamond Rain.
She Feels Pretty. Trained beautifully up to the race, got the absolute dream trip, and just found one better in finding Breeders' Cup glory. So nice win there from Jazora, the French filly who came overseas to get the victory, but no shame in the game there for sure for the runner-up, She Feels Pretty. Let's go to our 5th and final topic on It's Official, as we do each and every week. It's our Stars of Tomorrow. We're looking for horses coming out of the maiden ranks, maybe a 2-year-old, maybe a 3-year-old, but one we're going to be talking about down the line. We'll get away from the Breeders' Cup here. We know Ted Nafi was an odds-on favorite in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He delivered his performance. But one we'll be talking about in the future, I think, came from Aqueduct on Sunday. How about Rebel Instinct? Second time starter for Chad Brown.
Up the outside, double act, and here comes the charge from the outside from Hadrian's Wall. Swiss Army Knife continues this green, sustained rally from the back end of the field. Is about to challenge for fourth. The front three go at it. They reach the top of the stretch. Hugging the rail there was Rebel Instinct, and Rebel Instinct now sprints for home. Rebel Instinct in front. Double act is a challenging second. Hadrian's Wall is right there. They continue to duke it out, but they're behind Rebel Instinct for a final furlong, who's up by 2.5. Rebel Instinct, Flavien Prat almost there inside the final 16th. Give it to Rebel Instinct to win this one well. Rebel Instinct wins it. Hadrian's Wall second, double act, and their Swiss Army Knife.
Put this one on your Triple Crown watch list, folks. This is Buy Into Mischief out of the 2010 Breeders' Cup Distaff winner, Unrivaled Bell. Pedigree to burn. This race was a split division. The second division, also won by a Chad Brown trainee, went about 12 lengths slower. This was 12 lengths faster than a split division, won by a stablemate. 135.98 the final time here for Rebel Instinct. Really looked good, controlled things, drew off in the end. A very visually impressive performance. This is a $700,000 colt that you had better watch this winter, probably at Gulfstream Park. But Chad known to ship some of his 3-year-olds to fairgrounds and around the country for various preps. So put this one on your Derby watch list. Rebel Instinct, outstanding performance for Chad Brown on Sunday at Aqueduct. Let's review our topics this week on the It's Official podcast. We started off with the Goosebump Award. She's so spicy. She won this year's Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint by more margin than the last 5 turf sprints combined. She was fantastic in victory, one of 2 on the card for Jose D'Angelo. Forever Young made a forever statement, did it the right way, second off the layoff, a horse who shows a bounce, then comes back and regains form at the end of the season. Really great training job by Yoshida Yahagi getting this one ready to go. The Trailblazer wins the Breeders' Cup Classic in a star-studded edition of the race. Our lasting images of Breeders' Cup 2025, victories by Splendora, running to her works. Ben Tornado re-braking and running beautifully through the lane in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. And the unthinkable jumper on Ethical Diamond. Nothing unethical about that. Ethical Diamond with the upset victory in the Breeders' Cup Turf. No shame in their game for some really good runner-ups in this year's Breeders' Cup. Formidable Man in the mile. Imagination in the sprint. AG Bullet in the turf sprint. And She Feels Pretty and Rebels Romance in grass races. All ran A-plus performances, just found one a little bit better. And our star of tomorrow is Rebel Instinct for trainer Chad Brown. One horse that you definitely want to put on your watch list for next year's Triple Crown sequence. These 5 topics are now official because our podcast creator, Jeff Siegel, and I say so. That's the way we have played the game here on the podcast over the years and the way we will continue to do so. Hope you enjoyed this Breeders' Cup wrap-up for 2025. Next week, we'll have plenty more action and topics on the board to discuss in horse racing. Scott Shapiro and I will be back on Friday this week to do some weekend handicapping, so be sure to join us on the First Call podcast for that. Between now and then, hope everybody enjoyed Breeders' Cup 2025. Have a great week, everybody. Talk to you Friday.